Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Okay, it's Tuesday, and we are ready to go. The Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station, and or FM translator, and live around the world at michaeldukeshow.com on the internet, where you'll find links to everything, social media, podcasts, the whole schmear. Good morning and welcome to it. Chilly Burr, still a little cool around the old homestead this morning. 0 degrees here at the Radio Ranch, overlooking the beautiful Canuck Arm here in the Matsu, and still a little chilly as we expect and experiences those temperatures throughout the state. But spring is on the horizon. Tomorrow is March 1st. I don't know how we got here so fast. As I get older, the days it's like a rapid fire. They just flash right by. Your whole life flashes before your eyes. And that's okay. That's okay. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. It is Tuesday, and that means that we are going to be going over the weekly top 3 with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, who's going to be coming in with us in just a few minutes here and talking about 3 big topics, including the staggering amount of money being funneled from the lower 80% to the upper 20%, how Zack Fields proposes to shift even more of that money, and, of course, the pleas for the Cook Inlet dollars have now begun. And we'll get a full detailed rundown from Brad on all of those topics here, starting in just a few minutes. And he, of course, is with Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and we'll see what he has to say on that and more. Then in hour 2 of the program, we will hang out with Chris Story and get our weekly life coaching lesson done with Chris Story. And he'll come in and, I don't know, it's just a little bit of a positivity boost, which we need sometimes after we are done with Brad. And it should be a fun time. And of course, a plethora of headlines that we are going to go over here in a few minutes and, just kind of give you a feel for what's happening here in the state of Alaska. And, oh man, some of these things, I just don't even know what to say about. I mean, first and foremost, I guess we should talk a little bit here about the spending cap, the spending limit, which is working its way through the House of Representatives right now, the State House. The proposed policies, we've talked about them here on the program. Originally proposed by Senator James Kaufman, basically would tie the spending in the state to the gross domestic product, less the input from the public sector. State spending would not affect the cap. It would be tied exclusively to the private sector, which I'm not opposed to. I think that that's probably a good idea. And not only that, it is tied to a 5-year rolling average of the GDP of the state, the gross domestic product. It has two separate components to it. One is a statutory limit, which is set at 11.5% of the state GDP. And then there is a constitutional limit, which would be set at 14% of GDP. Now, why the two different pieces? Well, because we know just how much the legislature loves to ignore the statutory law, that they don't even see it. I don't think they see it as anything but a freaking speed bump, right? I mean, it's on and set. But this is part of the plan. This is kind of part of the plan. This was a component of what the Fiscal Policy Working Group talked about. Will Stapp is the lead sponsor of the bill in the House. He has spoken in favor of it. It is now advancing out of the House committee, and it is moving on. It's moving on to other discussions, as we will see here in the coming days. One of the people, of course, who has been one of the more, I don't know if I want to say outspoken opponents of it, other than, I mean, he says he's in favor of a spending cap, but he wants it to be kind of quote unquote the right one. And he points out, it's Cliff Grow, by the way, is who I'm talking about. He points out that it also is a component of the Fiscal Policy Working Group. He's taken a page from our book to talk about that. But here's an interesting twist on it. The bipartisan working group recommended in 2021 that a framework for a new fiscal plan that included a tighter spending limit be put in place alongside other elements, such as a new fund formula for the permanent fund dividend and new revenue sources. Lawmakers did not act on the recommendations from that group, which included advancing all elements of the plan concurrently, but have said they will use a plan as a starting point for renewed discussions this year. Remember, that was one of the key components of the plan, was that it had to be done holistically, that it had to be done all in as a piece, that you couldn't just break off one piece here, one piece there, and try to advance one piece every year or something like that, because it would all get lost in the shuffle. Grow agreed and said a comprehensive solution to Alaska's fiscal troubles requires a number of pieces of legislation moving together. I just think that forging ahead with a spending cap while leaving the other pieces behind is counterproductive. And yet, I don't see any bills from Cliff Grow putting forward any other components of this plan. So it's easy to go back and say, well, they said it should all be done concurrently, so we shouldn't do anything. Well, no. Will Stapp is putting forward the spending cap component of the plan. How about you put together a part about the cuts, or a part about the new revenue sources, or a part about refactoring the PFD? How about you put something else in there instead of just saying, well, that it's not good. This is part and parcel of the problem here, is that they're going to try and use that one phrase to submarine anything singly that comes through, but they themselves are not willing to bring forward other components of the recommendations from the Fiscal Policy Working Group, which is just irritating, to say the least. Then you've got the State Officers Compensation Commission, which is a board that is made up of 5 members appointed by the governor, who recommend salaries and emoluments, basically, for various elected and appointed officials, like the governor, the lieutenant governor, commissioners, the legislature, things like that. The Senate yesterday unanimously rejected a pay raise that had been recommended for the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the heads of the state agencies, and then called into question whether or not the State Officers Compensation Commission was he goes, I don't even think that they're doing their job. Gary Stevens says, I just think we need to give up on that commission. They have never done their job or looked at things seriously. Basically saying, they haven't looked at legislator salary seriously, and and until they do, they're just basically a useless commission. Now, that's not necessarily true, because last year, commissioners recommended the legislators' daily expense payments, the per diem, be slashed from $300 a day to $100 per day, and then that they raise their salaries to compensate. They just didn't like the legislators just didn't like the package. Larry Persily is quoted here. Larry Persily is quoted here. He's a member of the commission and owner of the Wrangell Sentinel. He said recent commission meetings have been contentious and unproductive. There was no meaningful discussion about legislators' compensation packages. Some people have said, well, when the legislators, who generally speaking are already, many of them already top 20% income earners, based on the salaries that we've seen here in the past few years from and the requirements from the reporting from APOC, they're doing okay, many of them. And even, that the base pay for legislators, which is at $55,000 a year plus per diem, is somewhere in the neighborhood, when it's all said and done, somewhere in the neighborhood of about $80,000 a year for what is supposed to be a 3-month session. So they're saying, well, this commission is probably just useless, and I can already see the handwriting on the wall. They're going to try and dissolve this commission and make something that's probably a little more friendly to supporting a new compensation plan for legislators. Bert Stedman is quoted on the floor saying that the recommendations from last year were rejected because they did not include a comprehensive plan to motivate the brightest Alaskans to public service, meaning we didn't offer enough money to everybody. And Stedman said the salary commission is rotten with politics, which it probably is, but I don't know. I just we're squabbling over this when we should be looking at a long-term fiscal plan for the state. I don't know. I don't know how to say this any other way. That's exactly what we're looking for. And then finally, we're going to talk about this with Brad Keithley, but Zack Fields has got an opinion piece in the ADN that, wow. He starts off his whole argument with the comment that I said is going to be the bellwether hallmark of a push for not only taking the permanent fund, but for new taxes. He's already starting to make the argument. Once again, this year, Alaska is in an enviable position of being able to fund public services with a combination of sustainable earnings from the permanent fund and revenue from oil production, quote, even though individual Alaskans don't pay a cent in income or sales tax, unquote. The handwriting's on the wall, folks. The handwriting's on the wall. You could see it already. Well, we don't pay taxes in Alaska, just like it's the only state in the U.S. that has such wealth. We don't do it, so you should pay your fair share. You should pay your way. You should. Yeah. All right. We got to go. We're going to be back. Brad Keithley is our guest. Up next, The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return to more right after this.
What is that?
Common sense.
Regularly heard on American radio.
Michael Duke Show.
Radio.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to the program. And what do we got? 80-mile-an-hour winds. Ooh, excuse me. Well, 80-mile-an-hour winds in Kodiak. 3 inches of snow, high wind warnings. Good morning. All right. Snow, glorious snow. How are we going to measure GDP, says Chris. I have seen that trick before. That's a good question. It's moving over to Ways and Means Committee. Yep. Ben Carpenter's going to take a crack at it. Let's hope that maybe we can get a comprehensive package that deals with everything, although I know they'll have to move it as separate pieces. I'm really getting tired of people of, road blocking stuff like this and like, well, this is just one piece. Well, hey, Jack, why don't you propose another piece and maybe we can find another person to do another piece and then we can put it all together. I mean, I'm just asking. How much money do you reckon the state would save in per diem costs by moving the legislative session onto the road system? Well, since the majority of the Mat-Su and Anchorage legislators, if it was put somewhere between Anchorage and Wasilla, because it would fall within that 50-mile radius thing, well, the majority of the legislature wouldn't get per diem anymore. The big chunk of the legislator would not get per diem anymore. So yeah, that would be a good take on it. Okay, well, let's do that right there. How about that? Is that better? That's better. There we go. All right, we're about to jump into it with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. I suppose I should simplify the screen here so that we can go over here and add Brad to it and get started. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Michael, I'm doing great today. How about you?
No complaints, my friend. No complaints. It's another beautiful day in paradise. It's only 0, but you chose the perfect time to come home and enjoy yourself, right?
I did, yeah. Snow on the ground.
I see. I hear the furnace in the background, and I see the big yellow sweatshirt. You're like just trying to get used to the whole thing here. Yeah, it's good. You can turn your heat up, Brad. You can afford a little bit more gas to get everything warm out there, right? But are you happy to be home?
I am. I'm excited to be home. I haven't had sushi since I've been gone. Illinois sushi is not known throughout the world as the best place to get sushi.
It's like that's like the gas station sushi of America, right?
I don't no dispersions intended, but first meal I had when I got home was sushi because I've been missing it.
Good. All right. Well, we're coming into it here, ready to jump in and start to talk about this. I will have to say, I know you're going to get into Zack Fields in number 2 of the weekly top 3. I got to just say the condescension in this whole opinion piece is just enough to just frost my cookies, man. I tell you what, I just listen to, I can hear the sneer in his voice as he's writing this thing. And I'm just like, I am so sick and tired of politicians acting like they're doing us some kind of favor in this whole thing.
Well, Michael, the thing that really triggered me was when he used the word surplus, that we have a surplus of revenues. How are we going to invest the surplus?
Yeah, I mean, and that was the clickbait headline, right? That's the clickbait headline is he wants you to look in on his thing because he said we're going to have a surplus. And they're like, what? And of course, the news flash, what he says is, if we don't pay the dividend, we've got a surplus. That's essentially what he says. No dividend for you. We got a surplus in government. Now, how are we going to invest it? Wait a second. I mean, he is literally saying, I know better than you how to spend your money.
People complain about oil company employees being in the legislature, but Zack is a union employee, right? And his bill for the child care is just one of the classics of all time. It is essentially to statize the child care industry, allow them to collective bargain with the state for their employees. So how is that any different when somebody from the oil companies is in the legislature voting on oil taxes?
It's not, but that's the thing. Nobody calls him on it. All right, here we go, Brad. We're jumping back into it. Folks, like and share, follow. Here we go.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yeah. That's right. That's what it means. Welcome back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We are jumping into it. The weekly top three starts right now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, joins us every week with three big topics that we've got to address. And we're going to start things off today with him right now. Good morning, sir. Welcome back to the great land, and thanks for coming on this morning.
Good morning, Michael. It's great to be back in Alaska, and it's always a pleasure to be with you wherever I am.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's good to come home every now and then and get your roots down again. All right, well, let's start off with this, Brad. I really want to get into this because I got some things to say, but I want to hear what you have to say. So first things first. I mean, it's just
I'll get first crack, and then
you'll get first crack. I'll get second crack. So we're looking at the dollars being shifted from the middle and lower income Alaska families to the top 20% is pretty amazing. And you actually sat down and did the math and got the numbers cranking, and you took a look at it in your latest piece at on the Alaska Landmine, which is your chart of the week from Friday, and it talks about basically the death of the PFD. How long will it be before the PFD is pretty much gone? And it's not too long. That's the bottom line. It's not too long.
I got a lot of questions after the chart of the week a couple of weeks ago was looking at various fiscal baselines. I got a number of questions about, well, how long is it that the PFD lasts on the trajectory we're on? So I did last Friday's chart. I focused last Friday's chart on that subject, and it's not very long. By 2032, which will be the 50th anniversary of the PFD, the handwriting's pretty much on the wall. It's not gone yet, but there's not much of it left. If you look at it as a percent of the POMV draw, which is a good way to look at it, by 2032, the PFD, and I calculate this by taking filling the deficits that we see ahead, the fiscal deficits that we see ahead, filling those with PFD cuts. By 2032, the PFD is down to 10%. Of the POMV draw, and the trajectory is just taking it on down. So by the mid 2030s, shortly after its 50th anniversary, the PFD is essentially a token amount, sort of like the equivalent of the statutory budget reserve or the constitutional budget reserve. It's just we sort of keep it around to say we have it, but it's not much. But the permanent fund earnings over that period are growing throughout the entire period. I mean, the POMV draw just keeps going up and up and up. So what's happening as the PFD comes down and the POMV draw is going up? What's happening is we're shifting dollars that are under the PFD being distributed to Alaska families, predominantly of benefit to middle and lower income Alaska families as a share of income. We're shifting dollars from that to the other use of the PFD. Now we talk about the other use of the other use of permanent fund earnings. We talk about the other use of permanent fund earnings to pay for government, but looked at differently, what those permanent fund earnings are really doing is they're subsidizing taxes or replacing taxes or substituting for taxes. If there wasn't permanent fund earnings, then we would be having taxes to pay for those deficits, to cover the deficits. So the permanent fund earnings that are going to government are really going to prevent or to substitute or to cover for taxes, which is predominantly a benefit to the top 20%. So what you see over the course of the next decade, and we're roughly at 50-50 now. The POMV draw is like 46-54, 46 for the PFD, 54 to substitute for taxes. What you see over the next decade is a rapid shift in the permanent fund earnings from being used in half to pay for the PFD, that declining from roughly 50% down to 10%, and the portion being and thus the benefit to middle and lower income Alaska families declining from roughly 50% down to 10%, shifting over to the benefit to the top 20% being used as a substitute for taxes. And that's going over the next decade from roughly 50% now up to 90% of the draw. That's because the deficits are growing over that period. Traditional revenues are down. Spending continues to grow. But it's being shifted over. The dollars are being taken out of middle and lower income Alaska families, and they're transferring to the benefit of the top 20%. Think for a second what's going on with the top 20%. They would otherwise have to pay taxes to cover the deficits during that entire period. But because of the shift in the POMV draw, the permanent fund earnings to their benefit to substitute for taxes, they're not having to pay for taxes. They're able to keep the money that they would otherwise have to pay for taxes in their pockets. They're not having to pay the taxes. They keep it in their bank account. So what's really going on over this period, over the next 10 years, is we're shifting, taking money out of the hands, out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families, and through substituting for taxes, through using those permanent fund earnings to substitute for taxes, we are allowing the top 20% to keep their money, the same amount of money that's being taken out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families. That money is staying in the pockets of the top 20%. And the numbers are sort of staggering. Over the past 7 years, as we've been using PFD cuts, we've shifted about $7 billion out of the pockets of through PFD cuts. We've shifted about $7 billion out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families, largely into the pockets of the top 20% through PFD cuts. Over the next decade, we're going to shift an additional $17 billion, $18 billion, almost $18 billion out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families into the pockets of the top 20%. So over the entire period, counting the shifts that have occurred today, up to 2032, we're shifting roughly $25 billion, $25 billion out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families, taking that money out of their pockets through PFD cuts and putting that money instead into the pockets of the top 20% by allowing them to avoid taxes, to have continued government spending, but not having to pay taxes for it. It's a massive amount of shift in income that's going on from middle and lower income Alaska families up to the top 20%. Normally, you think about tax policy and fiscal policy being to the bad part of it being shifting money out of the top 20% into middle and lower income Alaska families through progressive taxes. But in Alaska, we're doing the exact reverse through regressive taxes, the most regressive tax system in the nation, most regressive fiscal policy approach in the nation. We're shifting money out of middle and lower income Alaska families into the top 20%. So $25 billion, that's a huge number.
Well, I think one of the key factors there that you're talking about as well is that while they are taking more of the POMV draw, again, what's supposed to be a 50-50, when they're taking 90%, you're also, again, talking about the permanent fund itself increasing. So the returns are increasing. So they're getting a larger portion of a larger piece of the pie, and Alaskans are left with crumbs in the end. I mean, if we're getting 10%, it might be an $800 dividend. But what it really should be is like a $6,000 or $7,000 dividend. So all that money is going straight to the state.
I did that calculation on the side as I was doing last week's charts. I'll print it at some point, but the dividend goes from roughly $2,400. It should be, we'll talk about this in a minute when we talk about Zack Fields' op-ed, but the dividend this year, just to cover the deficit, would be about $2,400, the amount left over after deducting for the deficit. $2,400 this year, down to less than $700 by 2032. It's declining over that entire period. And the $700, I mean, that quickly goes on down as additional years go by, additional deficits go by, as the 10% shrinks even further.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're talking about the weekly top three. And again, this hits directly in the middle ground. Somebody asked the question, can we get a valuation on all the things that the lower income people receive, SNAP benefits and all that stuff. It's not just the lowest income people that are hit, though. It's also the middle class who are getting squeezed on this as well.
And you know, people want to say, oh, SNAP benefits. That's a federal benefit. It's not a state benefit. I mean, you're mixing and matching. You're
right.
mixing and matching there.
It's administered by the state, but it's a federal benefit.
Right. It's federal money. So right. the only really benefit, and it's not really a benefit to lower income Alaska families. The only really benefit that's coming from state dollars that's distributed like that's disproportionate to lower income Alaska families is Medicaid, and Medicaid is not those dollars don't end up in the pockets of lower income Alaska families. Those dollars end up in the healthcare system, end up in the pockets of docs and hospitals and others in the healthcare system who largely are in the top 20%. The greatest opponents, I'll never forget this, the greatest pushback that Governor Dunleavy got when he was talking initially about Medicaid cuts was not, or Medicare cuts, whichever it is, was not from lower income Alaska families or representative of lower income Alaska families. It was from the docs, the doctors, and the healthcare system who otherwise are taking those dollars and pocketing those dollars and have become dependent on that government program for their income. So the one state program we have that people might complain about and say, oh, well, those are benefits to lower income Alaska families that are coming out of state coffers. Those really aren't benefits. I mean, they get the services, but the dollars aren't going into their pockets. The dollars are going into the pockets of the docs and the healthcare system.
Yeah. Brad Keithley continues. Let's go on to number 2, Brad, the Zack Fields. If you want to give me a synopsis, we'll go to break early and come back and see if we can get 2 and 3 in one segment there.
So Zack Fields has an op-ed that you mentioned earlier. It has an op-ed in the ADN that talks about what we ought to be doing in terms of fiscal policy. And his argument is that we ought to cut the PFD. Now, remember that the PFD amount after closing the deficit that's projected for this coming fiscal year, the PFD amount is about $2,400. Zack says we ought to be cutting the PFD down to $1,000 and using the surplus, as he calls it, for other state spending programs. And we'll talk more about the impact of that. But it's
investing, you plebes, you don't pay taxes anyway, so what do you care? That's the kind of the answer that we're. Oh man! All right, we got more coming up. We're going to continue. Brad Keithley is our guest. It is the weekly top 3. Feel free to join us in the chat room if you'd like, where you can yell at Brad along with everybody else. Just go over to Facebook.com/Michael Duke Show. And you can join us there or on YouTube or on Twitch. We continue with Brad Keithley in just a moment, right here on your Hope for Common Sense Radio.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
And we're in the break. There you go. Yeah, this whole op-ed thing is just, I mean, I read it and my brain just immediately melted down after reading it, because I'm just like, the stretches that we go to here. But I can see it already, Brad. I've been talking about this for a long time, that this was going to be the next phase of the attack, is that they're going to tell us, well, we don't pay taxes anyway. Now you've got to pay your fair share. Now you've got to do it. They're already starting that, we don't pay any taxes, and that's just free money. And, the irony here, of course, is that Zack Fields, his constituency is made up of a bunch of low-income people, and they should be burning him at the stake over something like this, because they're losing $10,000, $15,000 out of their households if they've got a couple kids or whatever. They're losing a huge amount, and he's basically saying, well, we know better than you how to spend this money.
Yeah, Zack Fields is Ron Duncan and Jim Jansen's favorite legislator, Democrat or Republican. He's just their favorite legislator. because he's leading the charge for continual cuts in the PFD to pay for bigger government. But the continual cuts in the PFD also are shifting over and benefiting the top 20% by enabling them to avoid taxes. And Zack's purpose is to get more money into government to pay for more government employees. We were talking before we went on the show or during the show, but we were talking about Zack's latest bill, which is essentially to nationalize or stateize the child care industry by providing for subsidies, creating a fund to subsidize the child care industry, allowing child care providers to collectively bargain with the state for the amount they're going to be paid out of that fund. Just, making child care employees state employees, essentially. And Zack's never met a government program he doesn't like, but he doesn't want to pay for it. He doesn't want to pay for it by having Jim Jansen and Ron Duncan digging into their pockets and paying a proportionate amount of it, because he knows if he does it that way, they will oppose the program. The legislature will oppose the program. And so the program won't go forward. So what he's doing is he's taking it out of the pockets of middle and lower income Alaska families, instead shifting the benefits to Ron Duncan and Jim Jansen by enabling them to avoid paying taxes. And so they go, yeah, you want another program? I don't care. It's not coming out of my pocket. Go ahead, go at it. I mean, we saw the same thing with Natasha von Imhoff when she was in the state Senate. She, supported additional government programs. At the same time, she supported PFD cuts because middle and lower income Alaska families, by using PFD cuts, middle and lower income Alaska families paid for those programs as opposed to the top 20%. So Zack's just continuing to be Jim Jansen and Ron Duncan's favorite legislator by pushing additional government programs, but by doing it in a way where they don't have to, Jansen and Duncan and the others in the top 20% don't have to pay the costs.
There's plenty of ways that we could cut the spend in the state of Alaska. Brad and I have analyzed those, broken them down. There's money left on the table for the oil industry. We could be taking another $300, $400, $500 million out of that. We could be doing all those things. Unfortunately, as we pointed out, there just doesn't seem to be the political will to take that approach. I mean, anytime we've seen that happen, and we keep pointing it out, even when the governor redlined a lot of this stuff, that he couldn't get 16 Republicans in the legislature to support his redlining of that kind of stuff as well. So, I mean, we've got to take a grip on this and figure out, how do we slow roll everything that's happening? Because it seems like right now, the majority of players in the legislature, now granted, we've got a whole new batch now this year, but in the past, the whole majority of the legislature has been on the path to just creating bigger, badder government programs. We can't figure out how to get them to cut or even to acknowledge that cuts are needed. I mean, the Fiscal Policy Working Group did as part of their thing, but it wasn't all cuts. It was a combination of everything. And that's the problem. We can't get to the cuts only approach from here.
Until you get Jim Jansen and Ron Duncan and others in the top 20% focused on cuts, until you get them focused on cut, that's the donor class, that's the trade group class, that's the class that hires the lobbyists. Until you get them focused on cuts, we're not going to have cuts. We're going to have a lot of talk about it, but we're not going to have cuts made. And the only way you're going to get them focused on it is if they have to pay a share of the costs of government. Right now, they don't have to. Using PFD cuts, they avoid paying for the cost of government. So, we can talk about this. We can talk about the theory of cuts all day long, as you said, we have for the last decade. But until you have the political will of the top 20%, not just general political will, but the political will of the top 20% of the donor class, of the lobbying class, of the trade association class, until you have their political will involved in making cuts, they're not going to happen.
Brad Keithley, our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're going to jump back into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Like and share, like and share. Let's do it.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Huh. Whew, I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
That's right. It's not your daddy's talk radio. It's mine. I'm my own daddy, grandpa, whatever. All right, welcome back to the program. The weekly top three continues. Brad Keithley, our guest. Zack Fields wrote a piece. I think it's the first shot in a bigger battle, a more longer-term battle, and I think it shows the ultimate end game of what some of the legislators there in Juneau want to see, which, of course, is basically subsumption of the PFD into government spending, and they'll throw us a few crumbs at the end. But basically, the whole article entails, we know better than you how to spend your money, so you should just shut up and sit down and let us do it. Brad, your thoughts on Zack Fields' piece and the breakdown?
Well, it's basically as I was saying during the break, he's Ron Duncan and Jim Jansen's favorite legislator, because Zack Fields wants to grow bigger government. He wants to expand government services. His child care bill is one example of that. But he doesn't want he doesn't want to trigger the opposition of the top 20%. So he's proposing to do it through PFD cuts, taking it out of the hides of middle and lower income Alaska families while he's growing government. And he's setting a target out there of saying, well, we really only need $1,000 PFD. That's really sort of the average. It's not, but it's really sort of the average over the entire program. And so, you ought to be happy with $1,000 PFD, and we'll just take all of the additional money above that and we'll put it into bigger government programs. And what you've got is the top 20% saying, I'm fine, because they don't have to pay for it. I mean, Fields is being very smart about how he's approaching this. He's approaching it in a way that allows him to grow government, but doesn't trigger the lobbyists, the trade associations, the big donor class involved in the state. He's doing it in a way that's trying to end run those. Jim Jansen will write an editorial on occasion that will talk about, we need to avoid taxes, so we need to keep using PFD cuts. And Fields, every time on Twitter and on Facebook, will say, this is exactly the right approach. This is exactly what I've been saying all along. It's like this mutual support group between the big government left and the anti-tax right. As long as you don't tax me, as long as Ron Duncan and Jim Jansen, as long as you don't tax me, then whatever you do is fine. The only way we're ever going to get this stopped is to make Ron Duncan, the Ron Duncans and the Jim Jansens and the top 20% pay their fair share, their proportionate share of the cost of government. As long as we don't do that, we're going to continue to have things like Zack Fields. And I know people say, well, when we get to taxes, we'll finally stop it. We'll finally stop spending. I'm not sure that's right. I think, given what we've seen, all we'll do is we'll shift into the next most regressive tax approach, which is sales taxes, continue to take it out of middle and lower income Alaska families. But B, if we wait until we get there before we make the top 20% pay their fair share, if we wait until we get there, the PFD will be gone. Middle and lower income Alaska families permanently will have suffered the loss of income that would occur from PFD payments. The top 20% will have converted all of the permanent fund earnings stream to their benefit to cover for taxes. So we've got to be stopping it now. We can't wait until we get down to the now we're going to have to go to taxes situation.
Kevin says, funny that a union hack is pandering to the captains of industry. Isn't that a little strange? Not in Alaska. That's business as usual. That's corporate cronyism. That's what we're seeing right now. Is a total fee of corporate cronyism, where they want the government spending, they need the government spending, and the unions, they love to cozy right up to that because they could see more of that money coming into their pockets through more state employees.
Exactly. It's the path of least resistance. I mean, the people that really control the legislature is the donor class, the lobbyist class, the trade association class. They're really the ones that are able to press the buttons that control the legislature. If you don't trigger them, then you're gonna be able to you're gonna have a much easier path in adopting the program. And that's exactly what Fields is doing. I mean, he wants bigger government. He wants government, more government employees. That's his job as a union organizer, to go out and get more government employees. He wants more government employees. So he's growing government to have more government employees, to have more union members, members of his union. And he's doing it in a way that doesn't trigger pushback from the lobbyist class, from the top 20, from the donor class, and from the trade groups. I mean, tactically, it's brilliant in terms of figuring out a way to get what you want without triggering the opposition. The only problem is 80% of Alaska families are ending up worse off. The overall Alaska economy ends up worse off because of that approach.
Right.
And that's the direction we're going. Zack Fields gets what he wants. Ron Duncan and Jim Jansen get what they want. It's just 80% of Alaska families are being left out in the cold on this.
I love how he goes into the kind of the, professorial history mode here. While payments of PFTs based on the 1982 formula is no longer practical, we can afford PFDs roughly in line with the original legislative intent of roughly $1,000, which is similar to the historic average of dividends over the last 4 decades. You talk about legislative intent. You could go back and see the legislative intent was that the PFD had the first call on all that money, first of all. And it had no dollar figure attached. It was a 50-50. I mean, it was your share of the money. Just because the overall pot has gotten bigger and now your share looks nice and juicy to those legislators, now all of a sudden they're like, well, the legislative intent was right. Well, yeah, the legislative intent was it should have first call. It was a transfer. It was not a income and outgo. It was a transfer. If you want to talk about intent, I love how they're trying to twist this to their advantage.
Well, and Hammond always talked about percentages, right? As a percent of the permanent fund earnings going to Alaska families, and talked about as the permanent fund grew and as the earnings grew on the permanent fund, a higher amount would go to Alaska families to as their share of the state's commonly owned wealth. He never talked about an absolute amount. The absolute amount at the time was roughly in that range, but Hammond never talked about an absolute amount. He always talked about percentages, and Alaska families always getting a percentage share of the benefits of the commonly owned wealth. So yeah, but Zack Fields isn't alone. I remember when the PFD issue first started in the late 2010s, I had this debate with Kevin Myers, of all people, Republican Kevin Myers, staunch Republican Kevin Myers. And Kevin Myers gave me that song and dance about how the average PFD overtime is about, $1,200 or $1,500 or, whatever the hell they wanted to make it up to be at the time. If you take out inflation, you can make it almost any number. Or if you use different inflation rates, you can make it almost any number you want. And how that was the average PFD. And aren't we lucky that that we're able to continue to do that? No, Kevin, we're not lucky that we're able to continue to do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not your money. That's the whole point, is that it's not your money, although you are taking it and you have continued to take it. Let's move on to number 3. Here we go. Now we're seeing more money. We see the beg. Here it comes, Cook Inlet gas. Now they're asking for money, and so it begins.
Yeah, we had a segment a few weeks ago where the Cook Inlet gas situation was first coming up. It was being highlighted in a couple of hearings, and I used the Rahm Emanuel quote of "Never let a crisis," or it's an old Winston Churchill quote actually, "Never let a crisis go to waste" from a political standpoint. And I suggested at the time that we need to be on the lookout for people saying, "Oh, Cook Inlet gas crisis. All we need is state money, really to solve that. Don't worry about it. We got it covered. Just give us the additional funds, either in oil and gas tax credits or outright grants or whatever." And it started. We had a hearing last week before the Alaska Energy, the House Energy Committee, where they were discussing Cook Inlet gas, and John Hendricks, God love him, who's the president of Fury now, bought Fury out of bankruptcy. This is the quote that comes from the Petroleum News, which is reporting on Hendricks urged the state to reduce royalties and provide production tax relief, as well as releasing seismic data providing a just and fair property tax, reducing bonding obligations, and eliminating duplicative bonding requirements. Now, that last one is probably a good point, and releasing seismic data is probably a good point. But the rest of it is give me money by reducing the taxes that you charge me now. Give me money, and I'll make it all better. And you know, yeah, it's give me state money, and I'll make it all better. What we ought to do with the Cook Inlet is let market forces determine what the best, lowest costs of the alternatives are. Some of it may be to pay higher prices to producers in order to provide them incentives to make additional developments. Some of it may be to develop an LNG importation program. That may be the cheaper alternative, but we ought to let the market make the determination of what the best approach is, and not try to cover it over again as we did in the early 2010s, again with a state oil and gas tax credit program that ends up costing the state a bunch, and really from a Cook Inlet standpoint got us maybe 10 years before we're back into the crisis again. So the market forces ought to be what determines this. Not we ought not to be using state subsidies, which essentially, you know, when you look at how that works, essentially right now would come out of additional PFD cuts, because we're not going to stop spending. We're going to need revenue. If we don't have revenue from these sources, the revenue is going to come out of additional PFD cuts. So we're essentially saying middle and lower income Alaska families ought to be paying for additional Cook Inlet supplies. That's not how it ought to work. The market ought to determine what we do from the standpoint of the Cook Inlet.
Well, and of course the thing is they can let it sit there and simmer and become more and more and closer to a crisis point. And then of course, by that time, everybody will be in a panic, and then they'll be like, spend whatever. That's the thing. I mean, the longer they let this go, the easier it will be to get the money in the long run.
Sort of like Bert Stedman's approach to the budget, right? You know, let it simmer,
Exactly.
let it delay until the end, and then it's a crisis, and everybody has to pass whatever Bert says is the right thing to do.
Exactly. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. I mean, that's the weekly top 3. Love it or leave it. It gives you a snapshot into what we're looking at, which is bigger, badder government across the state. That's what it's all about. Brad, thank you for coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we're out of time for this hour. We got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Chris Story will be joining us midway through the hour. We'll be getting our weekly uplift from him. Meanwhile, we'll be back in just a moment with more discussions right after this. I shake my head. I read this piece, and I just look at it and I go, this is where we're headed as a state, where basically the state just takes care of everything and we just shuffle all their money off to them, and we should be happy that we allow them to take care of us, kind of thing. I mean, this is the attitude that I'm seeing in this state government. I mean, almost at every level.
Yeah, Rob Myers has it right. I mean, essentially, we're letting the state, we're more and more letting the state drive the economy. The proposal, if nothing else, is the poster child for this. The proposal to essentially nationalize or stateize the child care service industry is a great example of that. But this is, I mean, what Hendricks is talking about. Let's do the same thing in the Cook Inlet. Let's have private producers, because I want the profits, but make me profitable by cutting my taxes and taking that money out of somebody else's pocket instead of taking it out of my pocket. It's just, I mean, everybody's in it for themselves. Ron Duncan and Ron Duncan's in it for expanded, internet service, expanded GCI services throughout the state. Jim Jansen's in it for expanded logistics services in the state. But they don't want to pay for state government. They want somebody else to pay for it, and cutting PFDs once that bridge got crossed during Walker's administration, it's like the troops are flooding across that bridge. Once they took the bridge, now everybody's going across it. You want childcare? Cut the PFD. You want to save the Cook Inlet? Cut the PFD. You want expand internet service out in the bush, cut the PFD. I mean, it's just everybody is focusing on that as the mechanism, because the people whose pocket it gets taken out of, middle and lower income Alaska families, don't have much of a say in the process. It's the trade groups, the lobbyists, the top 20% donor class. They're the ones that are calling the shot. And as long as they don't have to pay for it, they don't care about increased government spending. And in fact, a lot of them are benefiting from it as it increases. So Rob Myers is right. That's where we're headed.
And the oil companies too, of course, they're happy with just keep percolating along. We don't want to give any more money. We won't let government do it. You guys fight amongst yourselves. We'll sit back here and just keep pumping your riches out of the ground and take what we need. It's astonishing.
We're not going to yet, Michael. We are not going to get the oil companies to come to the table. We're not going to get oil company taxes back on the table until we get the top 20% concerned they're going to have to give up money. If the top 20% believe, if Ron Duncan and Jim Jansen believe they're going to have to give up money, they'll push the oil companies out in front first. But as long as it can come out of the PFD, as long as that's the source of income, nobody's going to go ask the oil companies. Nobody in the top 20% is going to go ask the oil companies. Nobody in the legislature who responds to the trade groups and to the donor class and to the lobbyists, they're not going to go ask the oil companies for more money. As long as it's coming out of middle and lower income Alaska families, they're fine with that. We've got to stop that. We've got to put pressure on the top 20% to come to the table, to bring the oil companies to the table, to lessen the burden that otherwise is going to fall on them. We've got to expand. We've got to broaden the base from which we're deriving revenue.
One of the things that we were talking about before the break was the advance of the spending cap that's coming out of the House, going to Ways and Means now. And of course, Cliff Grow was quoted, as he always is, about, the Fiscal Policy Working Group said it had to be this holistic approach, and this is just one piece. That's not going to work. But I don't see Cliff Grow advancing oil taxes or new revenues or cuts or any of the other things that are talked about in there. It's more whack, 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 instead of actually working to fix the problem.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it before in SB 23. Was that the POMV statute?
Yep.
You get a partial solution. I mean, Cliff's right in this respect. You get a partial solution. People lock in on that and say, well, we solved the problem. We don't have to worry about it anymore. And they forget the other pieces of it. So Cliff's right that it has to be a holistic approach, but you're right in that and then people have to actually come up with the other pieces of it. And for Cliff to complain about one piece of it without offering the other pieces of it is somewhat disingenuous. The real key, the real pressure in this legislature is on Ben Carpenter and on the Ways and Means Committee. They're supposed to come up with the holistic approach. And my eyes are on them. I hope other people's eyes are on them, looking to them to come up with a holistic approach. They're getting the spending cap bill next after it passed out of House Judiciary. It's going to go to Ways and Means, and I hope that they consider it and hold it as they build the other component pieces of the overall fiscal plan, and then advance them all together. If they just let that spending cap go on through without putting the other pieces together with it at the same time, it's just going to be like SB 23. It's just going to be, another partial solution that people are going to say, well, we finally did it. We finally got a fiscal plan. We don't have to do anything more for the next 7 years or 10 years or whatever. Let's make it the holistic approach. And the place to make it the holistic approach is the place where it's supposed to be occurring in House Ways and Means.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Donna says, be careful what you ask for. Yeah, all right. I'm with you. I mean, I understand. I don't know how else to fix this whole thing. I'm watching what the legislator's doing, and somebody said earlier, how long will it take all the new people to be subsumed by the legislature? It won't take long. I mean, it seems like the majority of them become pod people within a first session, within the first year or so. We've seen people go down there with big ideals and come back the next year like, well, we just can't do what you want us to do, so we're going to have to just go with the flow. And that's part of the problem. But I'm out of time. Brad, thank you so much for coming on board. As always, good to talk with you. Thank you for being part of the show today.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing you again.
All right. Thanks so much. Folks, we are out of time. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Across the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or translator. It is the Michael Duke Show. Thank you for coming by and joining us and talking with us this morning. Hour 2 of the big radio broadcast, and we just finished up with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, and oof, man, some heated discussion in the chat room about all the different things that are going on out there. And, my problem here, and I think this is where we need to get back into the Charter of Changes. Because, again, this is part of the problem, is that Brad, and really one of the key things that he said during the whole discussion this morning was that, that the lower and middle income Alaskans are not being heard. The only group of people that are being heard are the special interests, the NGOs, the lobbyists. They're the only ones that are being heard because they're the only ones that really have access to all of our legislators. And so, I think that, not only do we need to be talking about changing the players, which there's some question as to whether or not they can hold their mettle, so to speak, and not be eaten by the machine and turned into pod people. But the question then becomes, what about the location? And look, we've talked about the Charter of Changes in the past, and I think that it's still important. I think that it is still one of the most important things that we can do to try and change what's going on in Alaska, to try and save Alaska for future generations, as I said on the Charter of Changes graphic here. We need to change the players, yes, and we've done that. We've changed out of now. Have we changed out them? Have we changed some of them out with the right one? Well, no. We've lost some good ones. We've gotten some good ones. We're kind of a mix, so to speak. But changing the venue, to me, is incredibly important. Having those people on the road system, having those people that are representing us, see people other than lobbyists, other than people who are there basically with their hand out. It was something amazing that I can't remember if it was Rob Myers or Mike Shower said recently when they were saying, well, we may be in this super minority with no real official minority and everything else, but still lobbyists still show up in their offices every day, not at the same rate as when they were in the majority, but lobbyists still show up every day and they still have their hand out asking for certain things and everything else. This, folks, this is the issue. This is it. If you had a steady parade of people coming in through your office door every day with the stories of tales of woe about how bad it is and how, oh, if only we could make a difference, and you've got the checkbook and you can write us a check to fix this, that's all they're hearing. They're not hearing average everyday Alaskans coming in to their office and talking about specific bills or tightening the belt or fighting those things. The hearings are filled with, with people who are there on the government's dime. Whether it's lobbyists for the school districts or, PTA or other interest groups that are down there, other NGOs, AML, et cetera, the municipal league or somebody else who's in there sitting in the testimony room, looking at the legislators, talking to them between the breaks and everything else. Meanwhile, we're all sitting on a phone waiting to have our say, hoping that they don't cut us off or cut public testimony off on these bills while we're all waiting in the wings. We've got to change the venue. We have got to get the legislative session, not the Capitol. I don't want to have that fight again. I don't want to have that fight again. Not the Capitol. We have got to get the legislative session onto the road system, because that's the only way we can have direct interactions and connectivities. Look our legislators in the eye and say, you're doing great, or you're screwing up. That's the only way we can do it. And I mean, unless we start taking these changes seriously, this is what's going to happen. They're going to sit down in Juneau. They're going to write their smug and smarmy, condescending op-ed pieces about how we should just shut up and sit down and let the adults in the room do the talking and just pat us on the head. And, unless we get a chance to get face-to-face with these people all the time to talk about it. Yes, and to verify that they aren't dead or have become pod people, says Brian. Exactly. We need to know, because it's easy when you're out of sight, out of mind. When you're not in connection with your constituency and all you see is the same group of people and the same lobbyists and the same special interests coming into your door every day, then yeah, that's what you're going to see every day. And it's going to wear you down. It's going to grind you down. And pretty soon you just be like, oh, that makes sense. Because you're not hearing the counter argument. You're not hearing the opposite side. I can tell you from sitting on an assembly and watching public testimony, hours and hours and hours of public testimony over the course of my tenure on the assembly, I can tell you when there is a group of people who are in the room who are upset and motivated about something, it has a profound effect on the elected officials who are in the room. It does. It makes them weigh their choices much more than it would if there was just, we just emailed testimony in, or we didn't have phone testimony at the time because COVID, there was no COVID or anything. But I mean, if there had been, I could see it when the room was full of people looking you in the eye and talking to you and, verbally poking you in the chest. You got a real good idea of where people stood on this. And I watched it change people's minds right there on the spot. I watched it happen. I watched persuasive arguments when they were being made face to face make a difference. When you're an anonymous voice on the phone, when you're not there looking people in the eye, it makes a difference. And yes, I know the governor tried to call the session and then rolled over and wet on himself and didn't force all the legislators to meet where he called them to meet, and et cetera, and et cetera. And that was a power struggle that, quite honestly, the governor weakened that position by basically just by blinking. He should have called it. He should have sent the troopers out. He should have sent the people out to find and to drag them back to where he has called it, because some of the legislators showed up and were like, we're ready to do business. And he didn't. And we're paying the price for that. And then changing the rules. I mean, we didn't even get into this, but I mean, Kevin mentioned it earlier in the chat room. You have a union employee, right? Zack Fields, who works for his day job, is working for the unions, out there trying to organize and putting bills in that would unionize a whole swath of the private sector. We're talking about childcare now, and basically put them, and that's not a conflict of interest. That's not a conflict of interest. I mean, that's insane. That is absolutely insane that he's in there putting bills together, testifying, trying to persuade people on the floor when it is in his own self-interest to do so, because it would benefit his employer. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, I think of Renee Broker, the borough attorney in Fairbanks, who was she was one of my favorite people in borough government. She was one of the people that I thought she was a clear thinker. She and I didn't always agree, but I always appreciated her. And I could just see her teeth grinding and her eyes locking up and rolling back in her head when she saw this kind of stuff, because it would never have been allowed in a borough assembly, something like this going on, because they have to abide by a different set of rules than the legislature does, even though the legislature wrote those same rules. I mean, think about it, people. We have created a nouveau riche nobility, a whole new noble class who do as I say, not as I do. We don't have to follow the Open Meetings Act. We don't have to follow the conflict of interest rules. We don't have to do, we just do whatever we want to do. Now, you guys have to, no, you guys have to do it. But we, some animals are more equal than others on the farm, right? I mean, the Charter of Changers to me seems more relevant today than it was the day that I penned it and put it together. I mean, it just seems more relevant today than ever before. And I don't know what to do about making this sure that this is front and center. We have to change the players. We have to change the venue. We have to change the rules. We have to change the funding, the way we build the budgets. We've got to do those 4 things to take control of our state. I don't know as there is the will to do that. I don't know if there is the will in the populace, not in the legislature, in the populace. I don't know if there's the will to do that, to get all that done. But the answer is right there. It's right there. All right. Well, look at that. We're up against the break. So I guess this is where we're going to go. We're going to go to the break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Chris Story, the man from Homer. He'll be on board with us in just a minute. And we'll get our weekly uplift after the beating that I just gave everybody and Brad Keithley gave everybody. We'll need it. All right, we continue with more in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
your mental suppository. The Michael Duke Show.
I mean, I'm just so frustrated and disappointed in this whole thing. I mean, I wish I had I wish I had an answer, but I don't. I wish I had an answer to how to fix this and how to make that charter of changes, be front and center of all these things. I mean, if we could just, if we could just, if we could just do one little piece at a time. I'm not saying we have to do it all at once holistically, but I got to tell you, getting the legislative session onto the road system would be a major accomplishment. Changing the rules so that the conflict of interest rules and the open meeting rules applied would be a major accomplishment. And you're right, Jim. I've known that for quite a while. My view is the minority now. That's what he says. He says, your view is the minority now. Yeah, you're right. My view is the minority now. The views expressed in this program and of many of you is now in the minority. That's just how it is. That's just how it goes. All right. Oof. All right. I've now depressed myself. We are going to continue here in just a minute. We've got Ben Carpenter who's coming up, and we're going to talk with him here in just a minute. And not Ben Carpenter, Chris Story. Sorry. Working on getting on the program. On the program tomorrow, we're going to have Rob Myers filling in for Mike Shower, and working on seeing if we can get another guest for hour one. But yeah, this view has been the minority for a while. It was just hidden when we could paper over it with money. He's not wrong. I mean, we're seeing this subtle shift in, and I think a part of it is it may not truly be a minority viewpoint. I think that there's a lot of people who basically just thrown up their hands and given up and walked away. I think they may believe like we believe, but they're so frustrated with the system and everything that's going in with it, they just whatever. And we're creating whole generations of children who look at the system because they're part of the system. And they've been told time and time again that government is the solution to all your problems, that there's a problem, then that's a government's responsibility is to fix it. We should quit. What did Brian say earlier? Brian said something like we should, he said basically forget about the rugged individual. We should basically stop fooling ourselves with the rugged. Here it is. Let's end the rugged individualist trope for Alaska, shall we? Sounds like we are willingly becoming serfs. That's the thing. I mean, we used to pride ourselves at Alaskans. I mean, we're the great land. We're the last frontier. We don't need no government program or handout. Well, apparently we do, because that's what everybody's looking for is another government. I mean, I've never looked for a government handout in my life, but apparently there's people out there that are just like, yeah, what can I get? How can I go? What do I do? Forget about that rugged individualism. It's a lie. All right. Wow, really depressing myself here. Let's go over here and double check to make sure Chris Story is with us and ready to go. Hello, my friend. How you doing?
Good morning, Michael. What do you mean you're depressing yourself? You're not alone.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. As long as I'm spreading the misery equally, that's all that matters. All right, Chris. Well, you're good to go. Hold the line. We'll be right back to you. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Yep. We're ready to go. Ready to do it. We're ready to talk about it. It's time for the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Story. He comes in to join us and to give us a weekly uplift and, just to try and bring us up from the Downerville that I just tried to drive us straight through. It's like we just took a trip through Downerville in your mom's station wagon. And I said your mom. It's Chris Story. Hello, my friend. How are you doing this morning?
Firmly at the wheel and in control of a Cook DeVille. I'm not going downhill. Flip it uphill here, Michael, on top of the world.
Okay, Coupe DeVille. Got it. Sounds juicy. What are you thinking this morning, my friend? I mean, you just probably listened to the last 12 seconds of that diatribe or whatever, and like, what the heck did I just walk into? But it's a little frustrating. It's a little frustrating to think that you are not, that this viewpoint that, like I'm talking for myself now, but this viewpoint that you've held for all these years, and you think Alaskans are with you, and you think that you've taken the temperature and you believe it, and all of a sudden you realize you're standing around pretty much alone going, wait, I'm the only one that believes this? Everybody else is over here suckling at the government teat, and I'm just like, wait, that's disgusting. We shouldn't do that. And they're like, oh, but it tastes so good. Just keep doing it. I mean, I depressed myself. Yes, I did depress myself.
Well, maybe I have the antidote this morning. Unwittingly, I think I brought you the antidote. I didn't know which snake was going to have fit you today, but I knew one would have, and I brought an antidote. It looks like I brought the right one. In my toolkit, Michael, I want to talk about backyard brilliance.
Backyard brilliance. Okay. I want to hear all about backyard brilliance as I try and get you out on the airwaves there. Go ahead. Yeah, let me fix that for you. Sorry about that. I was doing 3 things and I was trying to make sure that it didn't work, but there you go. There, you should have no feedback now. Go ahead. Yeah, I know how that is. I
put that as the title of my award-winning, much-acclaimed, much-loved book, The Backyard Millionaire: How to Create Wealth Where You Are with What You've got. But truthfully, it applies to all things interpersonal, personal, relational, community, economics. Everything is where you are with what you've got. That's the only place you can start. And by start, I mean make a difference. Want to do something, want to lift your end of the board, you got to start where you are. You may not be able to lift the whole forest, but you could pick up this 2x4 that's laying there in front of you. See, it applies, I think, to everything from, like I said, relationships, community. Now, community can be as large as the state, like you, Michael Dukes, tackle, or it can be as
right.
control over what you're doing in your own backyard. You can fix some suffering, not all human suffering, not all human trafficking, but you can fix some of it where you are. I'll give you an example. In Homer, there was an unfortunate case where a man was stopped.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
What particular apps he was using, whatever. Got caught, got in trouble, got arrested, and suddenly the community was can't stop all of this around the world, but they can stop it right here in our community. Put on a symposium, much attended by a lot of parents, concerned parents and grandparents. Community conversation. And so you just have this ripple effect in your own pond where people are now somewhat more empowered, certainly more enlightened and aware and able to protect their children right here, right where you are. And that's the biggest peace of mind you're going to find, I think, today is you cannot solve all the economic rules of the world, but can you solve some in your own backyard? Can you solve your own? There's a great Jordan Peterson rule that one of my favorite rules in Jordan Peterson's 12 rules is set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. In the Optimist Creed, there's a line that says, promise yourself to give so much time to your own self-improvement. You do not have time to criticize me. It's about you and your own backyard. Clean it up and become brilliant where you are with what you've got.
So, I mean, and I'm trying, that's what I've been trying to do, Chris. That's what I've been trying to do for a long time. I've been trying, so, I mean, but again, I just feel like I'm coming to the conclusion that I feel like I'm Don Quixote with Pancho next to me here, and I'm just tilting at this windmill, and all I'm doing is hurting myself, that there's really nothing coming out of it. And it gets a little frustrating. I mean, the listeners, I'm sure, are very frustrated, especially those on Facebook, because they can't hear you. But I mean, I think every one of the listeners is frustrated because they felt like, well, I thought everybody was with us, and then this happened, and what do we do from here?
On the number of people across Alaska that you speak to every single day, you are making a difference. You may not see the results yet, but you are making a difference. You show up and you give people that empowerment. You were talking about Brad's point that the people at the lower economic scale,
Right.
they do have access. You are the one who gives that to the next show. You inspire people to reach out and how to reach out to their legislators. So I think maybe if you were to put on a master class on how to speak to your elected officials, that would be fantastic. Or maybe a series of 6 or 7 newsletter pieces that talk about, and here's how you speak. See, if you could solve that gap, if Brad's right, we don't need guys to go to Juneau or have a cause to go to Juneau. On behalf of the realtors, we send a delegation not of elite, not of lobbyists, but of real people in your own backyard, people that you know, like, and trust that have real estate licenses. We send a contingent every single year to speak to every legislator on real estate matters, things that happen to and laws that are coming up about your real estate. All over the state of Alaska will make a difference. Apartment buildings, tenements, or will have $4 million homes. So there is a way to make that difference. You are a voice, Michael, to those who otherwise probably feel very voiceless.
Right.
Tired. He heard about him and said, hey,
Right.
I want to welcome you to this community. That's making a major difference in your own backyard. Even if you don't see the results of my nephew having single-handedly won a war, he's making a difference.
Right. I'm not, I've always said, and I've said it many times on the program, don't grow weary in well-doing, right? I mean, you still got to keep doing it. It's not like I'm going to stop, but it is frustrating for many people. I'm sure me included. It's very frustrating to try and, see what we think are the answers and to basically just watch the circus that is Juno continue to cycle and circulate and do all those kind of things and do the things that they're going to do and continue to drive the ship up on the rocks. You know what I mean? I've often used the analogy of the train. We can see that the bridge is out, and instead of applying the brake, they're just shoveling the coal into the box. This is going to be spectacular, but the bridge is out, and it's frustrating to watch from the sidelines. We try to do our thing, but sometimes, you just got, I guess you just got to keep going, right? I mean, this is on this or any other aspect of your life. Right.
Scale of human suffering of people that are lonely, people that feel isolated, people that are literally physically shut in, people that are physically medically ill, and just one single word, card, or company could make a huge difference to them.
Yep. No, again, I'm not growing weary and well doing. I'm just doing what I can do. But I know many people. I know many people are as frustrated as I am with this and many other things in life. But you're right. Focus back on that's the old Irish proverb, right? Identify the things that you can change, or Lord, give me the wisdom to identify the things that I can change and the things that I can't change, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that, I guess, that is the lesson to be learned today.
Yeah, and what is it? What do you want to do? Where do you want to make a difference in life? And who? Not see the results for a while, but if you look individually, you'll probably start to see them. If you look at mass, maybe it takes a while. It takes a long time to turn the tanker.
Chris Story, the man from Homer, ilovehomeralaska.com is his website, and you can go over there and find all his different works, including his books, The Backyard Millionaire, Born to Live, Making of Man. Speaking of which, the Jacob Mann books, are they coming? I guess you got the second one coming out. What's happening there? I don't. It's, yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. If I ever had to write a book, I think I would just turn on the microphone and say, transcribe this. Here we go. Because it's, yeah. Oh yeah. He just talked him. Yeah. No, I mean, it's, some of us have different skills. Writing, probably not high on my list. Talking I could do. I just have to hire somebody to transcribe the whole damn thing. Anyway, Chris Story, the man from Homer, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Okay, my friend? All right, hold the line for just a second. Folks, we're out of time for this segment. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, folks, I know that was painful, and I apologize. Chris, I'm going to ask you to help me here real quick. I'm going to disconnect you from the system, and then I'm going to try and reconnect you because for some reason, some unknown reason, they couldn't hear you. So now you can say something. Let's see if we can hear you this time. No. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. Oops, let me turn the thing off here. I don't know what the deal is. I never had this problem before. Just all of a sudden it just stopped working properly, and I don't know exactly why. I could hear it. Luckily, it was going out over the airwaves. But Chris Story, your voice was not heard on the internet, Chris. And now is it not being heard at all? Hold on a second here. Can I hear you? Can you hear me now, Chris? Now, see, now I can't even hear him. Now I can't even hear him. Let's see. Let me try it one more time. And hello, Chris. Wow. Whoa. That was scary. That was some scary stuff right there. I don't know if people could hear that, but I could. You sounded like this. Yeah. I have no idea, Chris, what's going on. But I'm going to turn that off real quick, and I'm going to turn the Bluetooth back on. It's supposed to be Bluetoothing straight to my soundboard here, and it is acting super funky, super weird. So, hello, Chris. Can you hear me now? Nope. All right. Now I sound wonderful, but yeah, but nobody else can hear you. So I can hear you, but that's all it is. All right. Well, thanks, Chris, for all your help today. I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on board. Thanks for being part of it today. All right. Talk to you later. Thanks. Disappointed? Yes. I'm very disappointed that this system, which has worked flawlessly since Christmas, just all of a sudden today and yesterday, there was a little bit of a funky thing. And I guess maybe I'll roll it back to the previous firmware. I don't know, but it's I'm just irritated now. Now I'm just irritated. Okay. So let me kill that and do this, and we'll do this, and I guess we'll get on board. Here we go. All right. Phones, I don't know. I'm sure the phones are fine. Phones come in through a whole different setup. So we'll let's launch the phones. Let's give it a try. Let's see if it actually works. You guys will have to tell me if we get it done here. We've got about 2.5 minutes. I mean, the podcast is going to be a hot mess today because I got to cut the whole Chris segment out. So if you're listening right now, I apologize because Chris Story was not heard. He was only heard on the radio. It wasn't on my recording. It wasn't on the internet. It wasn't anywhere else. All right, let me launch the phones here, and we'll see if you guys can hear this in just a minute. Let's come on. It only takes a minute. I only have a minute here. There we go. So we're launching the phones, and here we go. Let's see if we can hear the phones.
Thanks for calling the call-in line of the Michael Duke Show.
There you
Powered
go.
and sponsored by Satellite West. You'll find them at satellitewest.com. I'm
So
about to push.
You guys should hear all that, right? You guys are hearing all that? Good. I'm glad. I'm hoping. Tomorrow morning, March 1st, 8 a.m., House Education Committee will hear school choice presentation from Bob Griffin and other national experts. All right. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for that info, David. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry that you guys had to deal with that. You heard the phones thing, though, right? Just confirming, because it showed up on my recording, so I'm assuming you guys heard it. Disappointing. I don't know what's going on, but we'll figure it out. Okay, we're about 45 seconds out. 45 seconds out. I even killed the stream and restarted the stream because I thought it was the broadcaster, but it's the soundboard. That's the downside. Oh God. My honey me sesame chicken is a hit. Well, it's got all great things. It's got honey and sesame and chicken in it. Why would it not be a great hit? That's delicious. It sounds delicious. Now I'm hungry. Thank you. All right, we're about 15 seconds out here, folks. We're going to jump back into it. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share. Like and follow. Do all the YouTube-y stuff. Probably not for today's show, though. It's just what it is. Okay. Well, phone lines are open right now. And yes, we could talk about the extended car warranty if you want. Or you could sell me some rust proofing in the extended package. I'd love to talk about that this morning. Feel free to do so. Undercarriage rust proofing, I'm all about that this morning. Whatever you want to talk about. Open line, open forum for the final segment of the show today. Because I kind of just jonesing about this charter changes thing that we just can't seem to get the traction on that we need, because everybody's looking to the government with their hand out like, can you help me? I want to be the thing. I want to talk about it. And somebody from the Alaska Policy Forum is calling me, but the phone thing is broken. So not going to work. You have to call in 907-433-3150. If you'd like to call in, feel free to do so. 907-433-3150. Of course, this hour of the program being brought to you by our friends over there at Satellite West. From Delta to Diomede, from Ninilchik to Naknek, from West Twin to Willow. Yeah, to Wasilla. See? I got it all. It's all over there at Satellite West. They will keep you connected anywhere in the state. Anywhere in the state, they will take care of you, whether it's for email or text messages or just a simple phone call or maybe surfing the internet. They have got a full load of items to help you stay connected throughout the state. So go over there and check them out at satellitewest.com. And, of course, you can find all their local dealers there as well. Okay, we've got one line Oops, I forgot to put all the lines on hold because there you go. Got to set it up for putting the lines on hold. So I got one line on hold, and we're going to jump over there right now and talk to them and see what they want to talk about, and we'll see where we go from here. So we start off. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, good morning, Michael. This is David Boyle calling from Anchorage.
Hey, David. Good morning, David. What's on your mind, my friend?
Well, I just, I put in the chat room that House Education is meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for a 2-hour presentation by Bob Griffin from the Alaska Policy Forum on school choice. And there are going to be some other experts testifying as well. Leslie Heiner from the former Friedman Foundation, which is now called schoolchoice.org. She's going to present on the constitutional issues and the 3 most recent U.S. Supreme Court decisions regarding school choice and its constitutionality. Then you're going to have Ben DeGrow. He's from Excellence in Education, the organization that was started by Jeb Bush back in the early 2000s, totally dedicated to education and how to improve it.
Right.
But they're going to, if people want to find out about school choice and what's possible in Alaska, and how it's working today, the little bit that we do have, they need to tune in at 8 tomorrow morning at House Education.
On Gavel to Gavel. What are there any bills out there on the school choice right now, or is this just exploratory, or what is this, Dave?
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, David. My question was, is there any bills out there right now, or is this just exploratory? Is this just informational? Are there any bills that are out there for school choice?
No, Michael, there are no bills in the hopper as of now for school choice, and this is just basically informational. I think it's probably, we could call shooting the battlefield for what's to come.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could see that. It's good to get the information. So 8 a.m. tomorrow, House Education Committee, all the school choice presentations, we'll get all the details, and that'll be on Gavel to Gavel. So we should be good to go, right?
Yes, it will be. And that's going to be basically sponsored by the Alaska Policy Forum, just an informational presentation. And people that maybe have a little bit of knowledge or need to grow, they should listen in to what the rest of the nation is doing as well to improve student achievement. And thanks a lot, Mike.
Thank you, David, for calling in and giving us the heads up on that. We appreciate it. Another phone call at 907-433-3150. Let's go over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Bonnie in North Pole.
Good morning, Bonnie. What's on your mind there?
There's going to be ranked choice voting events tonight at North Pole Hotel. It's from 6 to 8 p.m.
And this is for the
Wednesday night. What?
This is for the repeal of ranked choice voting, right? I
What?
mean, this is the organization to repeal ranked choice.
Repeal, yes. Ranked choice voting event.
Right, I know.
Campaign.
Yeah, you said that. You said it was a ranked choice voting event. I just wanted people to know that it was a repeal the ranked choice voting event.
Yes. Yes, you're right. Yes.
Okay, so Hotel North Pole, and where's the second one?
What?
The Hotel North Pole, where's the second one?
The other one is Wednesday from 6 to 8 at the Roundup.
Okay, Wednesday, 6 to 8,
in
the Roundup
Fairbanks.
Hotel. Yep, the Roundup restaurant across from Nissan there on South Cushman. Okay, and people can come there and they can sign the petition. They're going to learn about the event. They're going to do all that.
Yes, come and bring your friends and family.
And the big question, Bonnie, is can they pick up signature books there to carry themselves?
Yes, they can come and get their signature books. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, fantastic, Bonnie. Thank you for thanks for giving us the info. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Bye.
All right. Bye. Thanks for, I mean, I wasn't trying to drag it out of her. I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on it, that it was all good. It's all, you're good. All right. Well, coming up on tomorrow's program, we're going to be joined by Senator Rob Myers. He's going to be joining us in hour 2 in the slot that is normally with Mike Schauer. And we're working on another legislator. Hopefully we will have another legislator in hour 1 to kind of get an update on what's going on. And we'll see. We're hoping Ben Carpenter might join us to talk about the Ways and Means Committee and the whole fiscal policy plan, maybe bringing in the fiscal policy working group discussion and everything like that. And I'd love to, hoping that he'll be on board to talk with us. We'll see what happens. But definitely Rob Myers will be joining us in hour 2 of the broadcast, and we'll have a full 2 hours of that. On Thursday, nothing set up yet, but I'm working on a couple things. I wanted to, after the success of the interview with author Mark Cameron, I thought it would be kind of fun to do like an Alaskan author segment every month or so on the show. And so I'm kind of working my way towards that, to where we can get a new Alaskan author every month on the program just to talk about some of the books or audiobooks or things that they're putting together. And hopefully that'd be something that you guys enjoy as well. Something a little bit lighter side, something just a little bit different. And I'm hoping that we can make that fun. And of course, we'll try and have good news and everything like that. On Friday, we're working on Dr. John Lott to come on the program to talk about his latest piece on gun-free zones and red flag laws. And that will be hopefully a good discussion on Friday. Plus, of course, Willie Waffle from wafflemovies.com, who comes in to join us every Friday for our weekend entertainment report. And so that'll be the good stuff there. Okay, well, we're coming to the end for today, folks. Hopefully I don't know, I'm hoping, did I inspire you or did I just depress you? I'm not sure which yet. But again, as I keep telling myself, we can't grow weary in well-doing. We got to keep pulling for what we want. We got to keep pulling for what we believe is the right direction. And I believe that a smaller, more limited government would benefit all Alaskans in the long run. Although it's hard to compete with all that free Uncle Sugar money, right? It's hard to compete with that when they're out there doing their thing. And, but we just can't stop. Can't stop. All right, my friends, we're out of time for today. We will see you tomorrow for Hump Day. And the 1st of March, how did we get here already? The Michael Duke Show. You're so depressed you might start drinking Folgers. Now that's crazy talk. Ain't nobody that depressed. Right? Nobody is that depressed. I mean, oof. Yikes. That's some sheer badness right there. I'm not that depressed to start drinking Folgers. Okay, my friends. Well, we're out of time for today. Again, apologies on the audio for Chris Story. I don't know what happened there, but we'll figure it out. We'll be back with more Common Sense Radio in just 22 hours. 22 hours, I guess, not 24. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day, my friends. See you then.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.